Okay, so I want to use this as a backdrop at the bird sanctuary here at the San Antonio Aquarium. And they got all kinds of neat stuff running around here. They got chickens running around. You'll probably hear a rooster in a second. They've got llamas and ostriches and emus and turtles and all kinds of stuff just out here. And they got more stuff inside. But I want to use this as a backdrop to talk about the outbreak of the Spanish flu back in the towards the end of World War II. There was an outbreak, and they called it the Spanish flu. And why did they call it the Spanish flu? Well, they were the initial person that had the Spanish flu that the public thought of was a guy named Albert Gitchen, and he was at Fort Riley, Kansas, at Camp Funston, and he was a cook there. So he was locked overnight in a poultry car, a railroad car that was just totally loaded with chickens, and he was infected by the chickens, and it became an aerosol of what we would call the bird flu. Now, it was called the Spanish flu because the troops coming from America were mustering in Spain and to go fight the Germans, because the U-boats, for a while there, they were mustering in Spain instead of risking going to England to cross the Channel. And remember, France hadn't fallen. There was still the front was still intact, as opposed to World War II, where all of France had been taken over by the Nazis. So they had to go to England. Anyway, so they called it the Spanish flu. But virtually all flus come from two areas of the world. They come from Africa and the Congo region, and they come from Southeast Asia. Many of you that are about my age will remember a thing called the Hong Kong flu. The outbreak happened in Hong Kong, but the actual type of it was incubated much further west and south. So Albert Gitchen contracted this, and he infected several people. Now, the real reason that World War I ended was the bird flu. I mean, the U.S. entering the war was going to seal the fate of the Germans anyway. But if you look at the total number of deaths from the bird flu in the U.S., Germany, England, and worldwide, it was horrendous. So that's what really put an end to World War I. Now, to the victor go the spoils. I'll tell you that it was just the U.S. adding its weight behind it. But the Germans, in addition to fighting for years and taking horrendous losses, then you lose another 10 million people on top of that. Well, the war was over. And there was outbreaks of the Spanish flu in the U.S. There was a political rally once in Philadelphia where, everybody's getting together, and they, one or two people end up killing 5,000 people. And the nature of this kind of flu, I believe that strain was the H5N5. Causes a thing called a cytosine storm, which actually is worse on you if you're in your teens, because your immune system hasn't been imprinted with loads of other immune. It hasn't been exposed to a whole lot of stuff, so it rapidly reacts to the bird flu and causes it to go faster. and it really decimated the teenage crowd. For those of you that remember, that ever watched the series Twilight, Edward Cullen was dying of the bird flu when he was embraced by the Dr. Vampire. But the cytosine storm caused it to kill a lot of young people. Oh, there is a chicken. There he is. So anyway, they locked Albert Gitchen, patient 0, and infected him and started this thing. Well, I think their timing was off. I think this was actually released on purpose to help end the war. But the war was already kind of winding down, and it ended up biting them in the ass, so to speak. Reason I say this, there was a German general that was attending a conference in Switzerland. Actually, it was just before the war broke out, and he was the chief, one of the chief generals in the medical field for the Nazis. And he talked about how he was in America at a conference, and they talked about this thing called the double blowback virus. And he always thought that was bird flu. And any time that the bird flu breaks out, it's where people are in intimate contact with birds. That's why it happens a lot in Southeast Asia, because people actually, they're keeping birds sometimes even in their house, and they get contact with them. And same thing in Africa. So they're really worried about this coming back, because it probably eventually will, and it'll probably take out, with rapid transit now, and people moving to and fro across the earth, and it'll probably take out hundreds of millions this time, probably 300 or 400 million if it gets going. So they're always watching for it, and every once in a while you'll hear them talking about a cluster of the H7N7, H5N7. These are all names of the clusters as they change the virus loads. So anyway, that's the origin of the bird flu. It was initially probably man-made, and might be kind of payback for the exploitation. I mean, how many chickens die every day to keep your carcass going, and you don't even need it? You get all your protein from plant products. You don't even need that. I don't think you should be eating poor little innocent animals. Anyway, that's the origin of bird flu. Was actually man-made. Check it out, Albert, and he was at Camp Funston at Fort Riley. And actually, just months before this broke out, a young cavalry lieutenant graduated from there, Patton, and he used to play polo there at the fields. And he was probably there when Albert Gitchen was working. He had already graduated from West Point at that time, but he was stationed there. And so anyway, yeah, check out the origins of the bird flu, and check out the double blowback virus. Pretty much think that the bird flu was man-made. Didn't understand all the mechanisms, but they figured out the cause and effect of it. So anyway, if you got anything from this, like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. I'm out.